This is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Welcome back to part 5 of our discussions about Penny Dreadful. This time we're talking about Penny Dreadful Season 2, episodes 8 to 10. Welcome back, fellow Penny faithful. We're here with part 5 of our discussion of Penny Dreadful, Season 2, episodes 8 to 10. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Darklings. I am one of your other hosts, John, and welcome to our COVID-19 special, yes, where you can bring out your dead and examine the world of pestilence and plague in the Victorian era, yes.
I'm really hoping it's going to be over by the time this episode is released, John.
Yeah, me too.
And yes, lastly, I'm here as well. This is Ray, back to talk more Penny Dreadful. Hopefully, steer clear of any coronavirus themed things.
Yes. Hopefully it'll all be over and done by the time this episode comes out. We will be releasing this episode before April 26th when Penny Dreadful City of Angels comes out. So should be all done and dusted by then, right?
Absolutely. What better way to avoid monsters, demons, and coronavirus by self-isolating indoors, listening to a lovely podcast about Victorian horror monsters. Remember, sterilize those hands, don't cough in the face of your loved ones, and of course, remember, a good shot of alcohol will always take your mind off anything.
You're probably all sick of hearing all about that by now, weeks and weeks after those instructions being given out.
Oh, absolutely. And so let's get some instruction from Penny Dreadful, I reckon. Yes.
Absolutely. Just a reminder, these episodes are going out first on Patreon, so each of these episodes will be released in advance over on our Patreon group. If you support us over on Patreon, at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, you'll get each of our discussions about every episode of Penny Dreadful leading up to Penny Dreadful City of Angels. Let's get into our discussion about episode 8. This episode was directed by Kari Skogland. She went on to direct episode 4 of Punisher and 5 episodes of Handmaid's Tale. And really interesting, I know you guys are both Marvel fans, she will be directing 6 episodes of the upcoming Marvel series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is due out at the end of this year.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that'll be good, actually, to say. I mean, I was very impressed with the Punisher show and a fan of The Handmaid's Tale as well, so it bodes well for Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Absolutely. I was trying to work out whether she's the showrunner for the show, because getting 6 episodes in the director's chair is quite a significant amount for a TV show. So kind of intriguing. I think there's only 6 episodes in it, but still some details to be released about Falcon and Winter Soldier, so we're not 100% sure. We'll probably know that later on in the year. And we will be covering that on TV Podcast Industries, as we do with all the Marvel shows.
Yeah, I can't wait to get back into the old Marvel shows, to be honest. Marvel, Netflix, The Defenders, and all those associated series seem a long time ago now, to be honest. But now Disney Plus is entering into the world of Europe, and of course, their slate will be coming on stream as it does.
And if anything, there'll be a lot less dolls, I'm imagining, in the Disney Plus shows, John. So,
Well, yeah, exactly. Although you'll be able to buy them, it would be quite annoying or really freaky if, you had Captain America with kind of that hinged jaw, like the ventriloquist puppet.
Yeah,
Puppet. And he is a puppy though, isn't he, really? But yeah, that would be really freaky. Although they could do Marvel zombies.
Yes, they could. They could. Marvel ventriloquist doll zombies. I like it. But the episode, once again, written by John Logan. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the summary for this episode of Penny Dreadful?
Sure. It's now morning and John Clare confronts Victor over permitting Lily to go out with another man. Victor has no idea where she is and he realizes he has little control over her in any event. Claire visits her when she is at home alone, but isn't prepared for what she reveals. Meanwhile, Inspector Russ calls on Sir Malcolm to learn why he visited Scotland Yard the previous September, but Malcolm refuses to divulge any details. Mr. Lyle has completed translating the diary, which explains the evil they are facing and the nature of their most potent weapon against it. Sir Malcolm breaks the spell Mrs. Poole placed on him and goes to her home to confront her. Meanwhile, Angelique finds Dorian's secret room, which contains a very special painting.
Oh, yes, it does.
Really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I will be talking about that at my point because I have it as finally. It's been 2 seasons building up to that point. Ray, do you want to kick us off with your big moment from this episode?
I really enjoyed this episode as well. There are a few things I guess we can pick from it. The standout for me was I always love an underdog, and I always love some of the minor characters standing up. So when Sembene opposes the witchcraft or the enchantment over Sir Malcolm, and he basically manhandles him and thrusts him into that room to kind of essentially just say, wake up to yourself. I thought that was a really good moment. Again, it showed the strength of Sembene as well, but tying into that as well, I guess with the overall main point, it is Sir Malcolm, I guess confronting this enchantment that he has, and he goes through the struggles of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And Benny telling him to know who he is, man. I love it. Absolutely. Really good moment for Sembene. We've always said he's kind of a background character in the show, but has some great moments throughout the series. And this is almost a moment where you go, okay, now I know why he's here. He's a really strong presence that Malcolm needs around him to help him through all the things he goes through, really. But such a wonderfully filmed scene as Malcolm goes into the room and starts seeing these visions of his family at another ball, effectively, this beautifully lit ball that they have going on, as you see the return of his children, of Peter and Mina, and his wife as well, in that room, dancing with him and trying to encourage him back to himself.
Yeah, I thought, I just love the fact that this room, it's been there all the time and we've never been into it. And that, Sembene, throws Sir Malcolm in there, with, his line about knowing who you are. And it's kind of like, this dusty room is almost like Sir Malcolm's memory. It's dusty of his kids. He's almost forgotten the good times. It's all the guilt, of, Peter's death, him shooting Mina, and probably just, in some ways, abandoning his wife in some respects, keeping up a facade of their relationship for, the social status and standing. And that's why I think, when it comes alive with the ball and you get the colour coming back into the room, I just think that's a really wonderful, moment. Okay. And all the guests, they're all kind of these ghostly white. But I thought this was really nice. And, it's certainly, it's that power, I suppose, in terms of the title of those mementos, of his past. But they're the good mementos. They're the things that put a smile on your face, and that combating this evil, where we see, Evelyn Poole effectively slightly aghast that, her plan or her spell, her enchantment has been broken by this positivity, in a sense, the good, as opposed to the evil. So this was really nice. One of the things I thought I caught in this as well, which I'm wondering whether it broke the enchantment as well, was the floor was really dusty, and there is a moment towards the end when it goes back to the dusty room and you have Sembene, Victor and Mr. Lyle stood, having watched, Sir Malcolm sort of, I suppose, dancing by himself. But in the dusty floor, it looked to me like there was the shape of a scorpion.
Wow.
It looked like there was a tail with a slight point, and one half of the claw of the scorpion. It did look...
It's when you pointed it out, we had to rewind it and just have a look at the scene again. It does look like they were at least trying to go for the shape of a scorpion in the floor, which is very cool. Maybe we're reading too much into it, but it did look like that.
It did look like that, and mainly because it was mainly feet doing sort of the body and the tail and the claw, but there were kind of parts where you kind of just thought that's possibly just a little bit of CGI to help add that kind of look to it. And not that it was obvious. I mean, it's just because I noticed the point at the tail, and I thought that doesn't look like it's been done by feet in a sense. But I thought that was, if that is the case, I thought that was a really cool way, because it's almost like in reliving his memories, he's drawn this protective symbol that helps to break the enchantment as much as the good memories. Yeah. And it's Vanessa by his side in a sense, even though she's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was quite cool.
Yeah, right. I mean, I didn't pick that up at all, but that is pretty cool as well. I mean, could it even be as well, maybe just an unseen thing, that this connection that Sir Malcolm has with Vanessa, and Vanessa protecting him in a sense. So whether she's done it directly or not, but since she's such a big rival of Evelyn Poole, could her magic or enchantments have spilled over onto Malcolm, and they're kind of like Malcolm's defense systems, potentially. But no, I didn't pick that up at all. That's a really nice touch if they do that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm just thinking, maybe it's not there at all, but it did. It just looked like it.
I'll see if I can pull an image of that for the show notes for the episode and see if I can share that with everybody and so they can see it as well. I did like Malcolm just before he was thrust into the room by Simbene. I loved his kind of speech where he's realizing that he's under the manipulation of somebody. He realizes this isn't him. His speech where he's saying, I was cruel to my wife and children, and then I became famous, and I was even more cruel to them then. Have you seen me grow into a happy person? That's not who I am. On the day of my wife's funeral, I was dancing at a ball. It's all of these moments where he's realizing everything that he's done over the previous few weeks since he met Evelyn Poole is not the type of person that Malcolm is. And everybody's been looking at him going, oh, sure, he's just in love. It's grand. Yeah. Like, he's absolutely fine. He'll come back to himself in the future. But even he's realizing the things he's been doing and the things he's been saying are not representative of the type of cruel man that he was in the past.
Yeah. I think, it kind of reconnects Malcolm to his good side here. But at the same time, I love how it contrasts with then the dark memories that Evelyn Poole puts on him sort of towards the end, where he's seeing the worst of what he has become. So there's that nice bookend here, I think, within this episode. I also really liked the intercut between Malcolm in his drawing room with Evelyn Poole sort of just playing literally with his heart. And dare I say it, with the Malcolm fetish, and Evelyn Poole does have a Malcolm fetish as well. She is... I think this is what I kind of liked about it when she has that conversation with him before she effectively throws him into torment in her parlor room. Is I like the sort of tragedy of Evelyn Poole in this moment, where she's like, what's good is youth if you don't have anyone to share it with? And she really does make the pitch to Malcolm to be with her forever. And he will do that, but the trade-off is that, unfortunately, it can't happen, because the only thing he will accept is if they give up Vanessa, which she can't because of her own master. Certainly is a harsh boss.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
certainly.
I mean, you really do start to see the cracks in Evelyn Poole around here as well, and it becomes apparent she's not that faultless, just machine of an evil being as well. And they kind of humanize her. She's still terrible, obviously. She's a horrible person, but they're starting to inject that, so you do kind of get a bit more sympathy towards her. And that moment, when Simbene and Sir Malcolm go into that ballroom, and for that slight second, she's kind of like, oh, something's wrong with my magic. That was a really nice touch, I thought as well. This main point is mainly around Malcolm, Sir Malcolm, and how he's kind of struggling with this enchantment that he has over him. But as I introduce it with Simbene, I just love how fearless Simbene is as well. Yeah. Even with his relationship with Ethan Chandler, but also with this, and with seeing that the witches, when they invade the mansion, he just doesn't give a second thought about it. And I just love that about him. And it just adds to his mystery, because we learn later on a little bit more about him, but still not enough for my liking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But he's a really great character.
I think Simbene is a very cool character here. I mean, I love his he is almost like this immovable object. He's this stoic person at the center of it, and he comes in at the right moment with the right line to kind of keep people back on track as well. Yeah. He's a man of few words, but the words that he speaks absolutely have weight and force, and other people listen to him. And I think that's one of the things that's really good about this is, you know, because he's a butler, you know, because also he's from Africa, that there's all these kind of power relationships that could be with Sembene, and yet he is seen as part of this crew, that there's an equality there. And in fact, they really do take on board, his wise words. And you see how with Ethan, you know, and Ethan's troubled past of effectively through the Indian Wars, cultural suppression, it's almost like he is trying to remedy his past as well by his relationship that he develops with Sembene. So he doesn't say much, but there's so many kind of linchpins to other people, whether it's Sir Malcolm, Ethan, and Vanessa. He just has those quiet words, those quiet moments with them, or, you know, he forcefully, like he does with Sir Malcolm, throwing him into the ballroom. He just comes in and says, you know, cut the crap. This is what we need to do. So, like, I found Sembene when I first watched this, and it's only just grown with this rewatch, him an immensely interesting, character. I really do like him, even though in a sense you could almost say he's a supporting character, but he is more than that for sure.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad that he did do that to Sir Malcolm as well, because, I'm not sure about both of you, but around this time of the season, I understand that Sir Malcolm is under a spell and such, but I was starting to kind of miss the old Sir Malcolm around this stage. I was used to him being like the bedrock, you know, the leader of the team, and just to see him act in that way, maybe it was deliberately done, a little too long, but it was kind of like, I was kind of, no, he's got to break out of this sooner or later. Like, I didn't really like seeing him under that spell. So if that was obviously their intent, then it was brilliantly done, because, I was really happy once he was starting to, confront these demons.
Absolutely, because it was really from about the second episode onwards that we haven't seen the Malcolm from season 1 that we saw. You know, he was the supportive rock for everybody around him, the one that was bankrolling everything, and the one that was telling everybody to what they needed to do as the leader of the group. Whereas from the beginning of this season, he's been totally backseat and totally controlled. I absolutely think it was shaving his beard off that severed the connection with that fetish, because the fetish does still have the beard. I was right.
Yes.
it kind of reduces the influence, let's say.
Yeah, there's the chinks in the enchantment for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. And yes, it was also Sembene in that room after Malcolm makes the speech. He is the one that goes, "This is not the man I know." He is the watcher and has been since the start, as you say, a very quiet character, but when he wants to be loud and when he wants to be heard, he's absolutely heard by everybody. So really good point, Ray. Really like that one. John, do you want to give us your big moment from this episode?
Yeah, it's twofold. Caliban, or John Clare, confronting Lily over her dalliance with Dorian. But in turn, he unleashes the monster, the true Lily. And I've kind of said with 4 parts Brona. You really see that Brona is alive and well as she counters this confrontation from Caliban. And it's such a powerful scene. I really, really enjoyed it. I love the fact that here Lily steps up, and there's a whole host of things here. You know, earlier on in this episode, we have Caliban coming to Victor saying, "Where is Lily? You made her for me. She is mine. I will take her." All this possessive talk from Caliban. And of course, Lily comes back to say that men, you know, silly little men asking, you know, she recounts through Brona's voice, effectively being a prostitute and having men forced upon her. That she references back to the corsets that they must wear, that they must go through the slavery of marriage. This idea that, you know, women are absolutely subservient. And Caliban, in all his wisdom, in all his prophetic announcements, in all his quoting of romantic poetry, is no better than normal humans. And she really makes that clear to him. And I think this is so powerful. And I loved it from her. She really, stands up to him and makes him small. But I think as well, she knows who she is and where she comes from. She knows she's been created. She talks about Victor. He has brought forth, demons. But not only, that, she also then, after mocking Caliban says, but, effectively we are brothers. And we have been created to rule. We are the conquerors. So, and this is really reflective of what Caliban has said in the past to Victor through season 1, that, they are a new breed. They are part of the mechanized industrial world and they are superior. So this element has come through in her as well.
Absolutely.
Which I thought, was really, really nice. And of course, the other element here is that both of them have the notion of killing their creator, of strangling Victor. We have Caliban saying, when all of this is done, I think this is at the start of this episode, he goes, he threatens Victor with, I will return to you and I will show you the monster you have made. A real threat that he'll come back and kill him effectively. I love the fact that then Victor does kind of as a scaredy cat, run off and stay and sleep over at St. Malcolm's for about the next 2 weeks, I think.
I think he runs off into the arms of morphine for a while.
I think
and
so.
Stays over in Malcolm's house.
He's certainly been spooked.
I have to say, Billie Piper is phenomenal in this part. I think that moment where we see her Northern Irish accent rear back up in that moment where she's calling out about being dragged down laneways in London and then just having money thrown at her because she's a prostitute and that's the way she's been treated. There's a very specific line after she calls out being in the service of marriage or the slavery of marriage. Then she says to Caliban, doesn't your face belong beside mine? In this power move, effectively, is what she's saying. So she's not saying that the two of them will be wedded to each other and living together for the rest of their lives. She's saying, come stand side by side with me as we take over the world. And it's a really good twist of phrase from this character, effectively realizing her own potential. But that moment when she says, I've known this from the beginning. We thought that people's memories return because we'd seen that from Proteus and we'd heard that from Caliban's discussions. But how early did she know and how long has she been pretending to not know so that she could do what she needed to do? Like we saw that moment where she killed the guy at the end of episode 7 where she killed the guy from the pub. But before that, has she just been waiting for the moment when she's been allowed to do what she wanted to, waiting for the moment to be allowed to go back on the street and pretending to be the innocent? That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, it's a real change in the dynamic, for sure.
Admittedly, I found it, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. Billie Piper's performance was brilliant and gee, she's got some nice juicy lines in it, doesn't she? I was watching it going, oh man, should be eating this up because this is what actors love to do. She gets to expound on, just her character and all that. It was really cool. But admittedly, I did find it quite jarring, that she all of a sudden has turned, you know what I mean? And everything that you mentioned, Derek, is spot on. And what I loved was that how she kind of reverts, temporarily to that Irish accent, which kind of, it really does link it into, okay, she has recalled this and her saying that she's known from the start. But if I'm to be critical about it, I would have loved maybe a few more cues at the beginning because either Billie Piper has played it so convincingly or her character has played it so convincingly in the previous episodes that you just can't tell that she knows this at all and she's hiding it so well, or the fact that Billie Piper was instructed to play it as, as this innocent character. Cause I found the switch I found it really, abrupt. But it did add to the effect of it where she does confront John Clare. And, man, if you thought John Clare was bad, Lily is John Clare on steroids. I mean,
absolutely.
She is the worst.
Hearing that line from her where she goes, I will never kneel to any man like you will kneel to me, kneel for me. It's just so powerful in that moment. I do think, I'm not sure whether she knew from the very beginning, because obviously she's reborn and obviously she'll go through a period of time where she'll have no idea what's going on. But I certainly think there was one cue which was where they were having the conversation. Victor was dressing her up for the first time and has that conversation about women being enslaved before. And I think there was a little switch that kind of clicked from that point onwards, where she had that focus, where she now is at the point of, I will never bow to another man.
Yeah, and I think Dorian's ballroom, I think, she does say, I feel I've been here before.
Yeah.
And I think there are some, and maybe even with the guy that she picks up in the pub, it is effectively kind of, she's prostituting herself out a bit for a one night stand, with, and maybe
that's
there's something there.
And
maybe a bit like with Vanessa, it was the act of having, sex that released I don't know. I agree. It's a difficult transition to do. And maybe, I think maybe John Logan wanted that to be as much of a shock to us, as it was for Caliban being confronted in that moment.
Yeah. But I do love that it's Caliban that calls it out, that Caliban is going to her, stop pretending to be so innocent. I know that you're stronger than that. I know that you're my sister, effectively. I know that you're created the same way that I am, so you have the same power, and that just makes her switch and go, all right, pretense is off now.
Yeah.
You're going to see the real me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for sure episode 7, by that point, you do see her colours coming out, but Dorian's, the ball as well, to me she was still kind of, she seemed to have a vibe of wonderment, without having like a little thing to go for the viewers, is there a bit of malice under that? Like, she was totally innocent.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a small quibble, because, we get this very interesting character in Lily now. And,
absolutely.
Oh gosh, yeah. And John, you mentioned about that quote. I found it very effective was when John Clare made that threat to Victor. I had in my head notes that it was very Shelley-esque, because, Frankenstein's creature, these threats that he makes. That famous one in the novel where he said, I'll see you on your wedding night. To me, that kind of harkened the same way. Like, when you're all happy, when we're far and gone, and you think that I'm gone, one day, some hour, when you least expect it, I'll be back, and you're going to be, toast.
Yeah, and there's these commonalities between John Clare and Lily ultimately, and I think part of that is the desire to kill their creator Victor. She says we'll come one day and strangle Victor, put our hands around his neck and squeeze. Yeah, that it's very Shelley-esque, this idea of your creator being born or created into torment and having to take a vengeance against him. So absolutely in the spirit of Mary Shelley for sure.
And I do think the true horror in all of that is, Victor is, he believes, a scientist just going out doing what he should do, and he wants to bring people back to life and create and take down the veil between death and life. He's done that, and the monsters that he's created have now turned on him. They're now saying, we will come back and kill you. You will fear us, effectively. So there's nothing he can really do about that. They are created. They are in the world now. So, so there's nothing really he could do to avoid the fate that they're now proclaiming on him. So I don't think he's going to be making friends with either of them anytime soon.
It's strange as well, because although he does harbour, John Clare, a lot of anger towards Victor still, I do believe, if you compare him with Lily, John Clare's rage has been tempered so much by, I guess, his encounters with other humans that have forced him to kind of grow and learn and change his views on things. He's still very angry at Victor, and especially because of this promise for creating a mate for him, and that's not going too well. But if you look at Lily, she's very hot-headed, and she has that so much rage still built in, and I think that's the big difference between the two. She's kind of coming in intense, whilst John Clare's had the conversations with Vanessa. He's had conversations with Vincent Brand, like he's found other people, so it's kind of, softened him a little.
Yeah. I wonder if it's, the meeting that Lily's had is with Dorian, and Dorian's kind of willing to accept her for who she is and kind of help her on this path that she's already on, whereas John Clare's meeting people who are treating him nicely and then turning on him. So, it's interesting that moment where he comes back to Bronan is so possessive. That speech that he's giving to her about "you're mine, she was built for me" kind of thing. That's off the back of the treatment that he got from Lavinia Putney, where she said he has colder hands than any human should, and that there's something wrong with him constantly. He had kind of been developing that relationship that you possibly thought there was some kind of love interest going on between the two of them, and he comes back to the house so angry at everything that's happened to him with that relationship, and not feeling that he's a real human, that's why he directs it as that. So.
But Dorian is also the double-edged sword. He is the honey trap. He's, the spider and the fly. So, he promises a lot, but unfortunately will toss you aside, literally and physically, as soon as, he's done with you.
Speaking of which, that is basically my main point for this episode. The portrait of Dorian Gray. Finally.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Didn't expect to see it in this way. I thought we were going to see that moment effectively where he goes in, looks at his portrait and heals himself. I thought that was what we were going to see in the show. I absolutely didn't think that poor Angelique was going to be the one that would see this portrait. He's ruined their relationship effectively. I think you guys talked about it last time, where I was saying that he's being very supportive of Angelique in her moves to be the person that she is, I suppose. Yet what we see at the beginning of this episode is she's suddenly going, you're leaving me behind. You found a new plaything in Lily, and you're leaving me behind. You're not doing anything. And he just brushes her off, but she finds the secret hidden room in his house. It's an interesting moment. I have to say, I'll talk about the portrait in a second, but I have to say it's an interesting moment that they still hide it. You have that reveal that she's standing in front of the painting looking at what's up there as Dorian arrives back home. They have the discussion. He says, "Now you've seen the real me. I know the real you. Can you accept me?" And Angelique goes, "Yes, I can." But unfortunately, the champagne glass has been poisoned by Dorian. And as she dies on the ground, he smiles, saying, "I never think you would accept me for that." So was that as shocking a death for you guys as it was for me?
I think so. I mean, I think here, what I really love in this scene is that Dorian has been saying he accepts Angelique for who she is, and that is what's given her the confidence. And in the end, what it really is sort of dust and ash, because he doesn't accept the fact that she can accept him. He can't take the other way around. And in fact, in the end, he treats her in exactly the same way as the men in the brothel house that she has come from. That they discard her, and effectively taunt her in the end. And so the hang up is with Dorian here. And I like that. It's the fact his weakness is he is so insecure. He comes across as the, the confident man, the explorer with social convention. And yet in the end, he can't simply accept someone else's love and acceptance of himself. And so that is what I really like about this here. The poison as well. It's just so Dorian. It's weak. It's, in a lot of stories, people that poison, they're classed as being, the spider that hides in the darkness. It's the weakness of it, because you don't confront and have the sword fight kind of thing. And it's always classed as that. So it's no surprising that Dorian does this. It's duplicitous in its own way, poison. You offer something as rich as champagne to toast one another. Well, and ultimately what you're doing is stabbing them in the back.
And he asks,
with the poison.
And he asks the question, "Will you accept me?" while she's drinking the champagne. So he's already poisoned her. He doesn't care about what her answer is going to be. He's already made up his mind.
I was going to actually say that would have been pretty funny. I was thinking, like, if he gave her the champagne and asked her the question, then if he was surprised at her response, he'd probably, "Oh, hang on, love, don't drink that. Hang on,
don't swallow it."
But John, I think you make some really good points there as well. I came from it in a different angle, in the fact, far less sympathetic to Dorian. I think that I'm starting to agree with your points, John, but the way I was thinking about it was I don't think Dorian cares about anyone at all.
Absolutely.
He, regardless or not whether Angelique had feelings for him or not, he doesn't care. Exactly, as mentioned before, he has a plaything. She was his plaything. She was interesting to him. He's now found Lily. She's far more interesting. He just has he's lived long enough. He doesn't want any bar of Angelique, and that's how I saw it. But it's very interesting. It does make sense about his insecurity of saying, I can't accept that someone would actually accept him. That actually does give him a bit more of a sympathetic layer, but I still like to see him as terrible, because like when you see that first shot of Angelique just kind of, reclined on the couch, and she's obviously been neglected, when you see her.
Yeah.
One of the worst things I think from Dorian is this thing, how he just tosses people aside. And so, that was one of the, I find him a totally horrible character, which is obviously he's meant to be. But it's just all that sort of stuff. So I have no sympathy for him. And,
it's fascinating, isn't it? I'm sure, I'm in my 40s now, and I've met people like this in their 20s. You've met people in college that were like this, who just throw partners aside left, right and center, and then they settle down. There's a point that they get to where they meet the person that they're going to spend the rest of their lives with, and they settle down and have kids, and they're fine. And it feels like Dorian is just stuck in that college mindset from being a 20-year-old for the rest of his life. And everybody that meets him looks at him and goes, "You're beautiful. I want to sleep with you." He sleeps with them, and then he makes the decision as to whether he sleeps with them again, forms a short-term relationship, or just drops them and leaves them in his wake. And sometimes it's like the "I'll never call you back," or "You'll never hear from me again" kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas Angelique moved in with him. He allowed her to move in clothes to his house, all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like he was setting up a whole relationship with her, and then suddenly she just tossed aside because he's found something new. So I hate people like that. So seeing somebody that's probably lived for, if you judge the portrait, probably lived for about 20 or 30 years doing this over and over again, it's crazy. So.
It's the dichotomy of Dorian Gray. He's open to everything, yet is closed towards the thing that matters, which is someone else's acceptance or love of himself, which he despises. And that's the point of Dorian Gray. As he says himself, just to move it onto the portrait, I reckon, is, this portrait is sin made manifest here. So it's his sin.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And what a portrait it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
To answer your question as well, Derek, with Angelique's death, I wasn't too surprised, only in the fact that with the portrait is built up as this, very mysterious thing. And I think once anyone has set eyes on it, that they're probably going to be dead dongers. So,
well, yeah, absolutely. It's such a shame. It's one of those things that you go through as a fan of a show like Walking Dead, for example. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of Walking Dead. So it's a thing that you go through sometimes when a character is taken out and killed, where you go, she's got so much story to go. They're building up this really interesting character that we haven't seen on TV very often. So much story you can explore. And then suddenly it's like end of this episode and you're going, oh, okay, we're not going to learn anything more about that person's history or their future or how they navigate this world. It's one of those things you always have to accept in shows when they kill off a character that's really interesting. So that's probably why I was so shocked, because you're going, oh, this is going to be really interesting. Maybe they will become this power couple because she's the only person that he'll reveal the portrait to. Maybe that's what it is. So, that's where I came from it. But the portrait itself. So, I talked to you guys before. So I've read the Portrait of Dorian Gray, the novel, quite recently. So, the description in the novel is slightly different to the portrait itself, but I think it's brought to life fantastically on the screen here. What you kind of hear from the novel is that Dorian is so obsessed with this portrait, he checks it almost every day to see what impact the things that he's done each day has had on the portrait. So I kind of like the little touch of that. What we see in here is just after he kills Angelique, you see a flash of blood appearing on his cheek as the portrait kind of screams at him effectively. So this bound image of an older version of himself sitting in shackles in this portrait is just fantastic. Whoever the production designer is that decided that this would be the version of the older Dorian Gray, give them all the money to do whatever they want to do in the future. That was fantastic. Really looked monstrous in its portrayal in the portrait itself, which is exactly what you would expect from what we've been saying as the dark heart of Dorian for the last 2 seasons. You know, it's been building to this moment where we reveal what he really looks like behind the facade of this young man.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I loved the jarring lunge towards Dorian. You know, and so the chains there are to keep him there, to keep him as a prisoner within the portrait. I love the fact that the eyes looked really real. Like you really got the sense of someone being trapped within that portrait with the eyes.
Yeah.
And then just the ravages of Dorian's sin on the portrait's skin, was just so good. So I was really, you know, it could have been like a deflating balloon. You see the portrait and you go, oh, okay. But this really felt, properly sort of, like scary. The idea that he was lunging at Dorian and you see Dorian's face kind of take that moment and almost a little step back and then smiles as he realizes, you know, it's still business as normal for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a very decrepit interpretation of Dorian and it's really good. Apart from those really, inhuman movements of the painting when it comes towards Dorian as well. On first glance as well, you see this, hideous figure. And then I had another closer look as well. And it is modeled after the actor Reeve Carney as well. So that the face is very much like him, but just really old under all that kind of muck and mess, is really his face aged. So, they did a really good job and totally met my expectations for this portrait.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's it for the main points about this episode of Penny Dreadful. Guys, any notes that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I've got loads. I've got millions. Hundreds of thousands. I just had a look into Memento Mori, obviously the title for the episode, which translated from the Latin is Remember You Must Die or Remember Death. I just like this fact that with Sir Malcolm, it's the reminders of his own family mementos of death. And, just reading a bit more on it, it is a philosophical or ancient practice of reflection, that has kind of dropped out of fashion, or usage even, that everyone, no matter who you are, king or peasant, rich or poor, clever or stupid, healthy or infirm, will die. Yeah. And the great leveler that is death. And you must remember that you will, come to that point, and I suppose within this era be judged. So it's almost like a check and balance in the past that was used to reflect on your life and how you treat others, because you will be judged thereon after. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really good.
There's only two certainties in life: death and taxes, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, taxes indeed.
Any other notes?
Yeah.
As I say, I've got millions. But go on.
Just a short note as well. I found the opening scene, which carries on from the episode before, with Lily talking to the corpse of the man that she picked up at the bar. I found it quite, I guess, symbolic as well, that she's talking to a corpse, similar to how Victor loved talking to her before she was reanimated. So there's a nice little cycle there as well. But also just what she's saying was very scary. And I found it quite lyrical as well, in the fact that, she mentioned something about she totally hates men, right? But, she doesn't want them to grow up, to stay a boy. And for this guy that she's just killed, oh good, now you'll never grow up. Very chilling stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt. I love that she also knocks over the house of cards as she leaves the house as well. Because I was wondering when they arrived in the home and you saw this house of cards built up, I was going, that's not going to last very long.
No, exactly. And I think that kind of, it is potentially, it probably is saying that Lily will become a disruptor in Victorian society, moving forward. So I like, she breaks the house of cards.
Absolutely.
And its foundations. Yeah. It was a great moment that, I think I have another note. I like Inspector Rusk saying, it seems we have a Quatermain. I'd mentioned about Sir Malcolm being Alan Quatermain from the comics, effectively by Alan Moore, the League of Gentlemen. The League of Gentlemen.
But not originally from that.
But not originally from that. No, so I had a little look back, and this was from H. Rider Haggard's novels, King Solomon's Mines, and he's a hunter. But there were some other interesting things here that obviously derive from the quartermaster in the army, who is basically a very resilient and practical, versatile person. But that Africans referred to Quatermains as Makamazan, which meant a watcher by night, which was a reference to their nocturnal habits and keen instincts, which I think, for this story is very, very apt. I thought that was pretty good, as well. I also did like Inspector Rusk and Sir Malcolm's, moment on interior decoration where, Inspector Rusk is inquiring about his predecessor, and you said you must hunt a beast, and of course he's got his rifles, 3 rifles as a tripod, which Inspector Rusk sort of notes, and Sir Malcolm goes, "I can decorate my home any way I see fit," which I thought was really good. And the door made of steel to keep out a beast, and he goes, "Well, there have been robberies," and I just like this kind of little lighthearted interaction between the two.
Definitely. One other note I want to just mention from this episode, I love the use of the nightcomers throughout the visitations to Evelyn Poole's house. I love that poor Mr. Lyle is having the conversation with Evelyn, and as he's leaving the house, it's just this labyrinthine walk where he's trying to find the front door. And in the background, you see the nightcomers kind of flashing in and out in behind him, and Hecate is the one that approaches him towards the end. But the same thing happens when Malcolm arrives as well. He comes in through the front door thinking he's alone, and you see the nightcomers in the background. It's a great gothic horror moment as they use these flashes of the witches in the background. Very cool. Almost it, John. One more note.
I do, yes. It is just to say and confirm that the Verbis Diablo has been fully translated here.
Yes.
And we get that it is 2 brothers that have been cast out of heaven, one to earth and one to hell. The one cast out to earth will feed on blood and relates to the vampiric element of this story, and the other one to hell will feed on souls and Lucifer, because obviously first season is very much around vampires. This season is around the devil in hell. So I thought that was really nice to get this kind of this idea. That's the shock ultimately, is that there are 2 Lucifers here from the Verbis Diablo. And we have Sir Malcolm correcting Mr. Lyle that actually it's not Hound of God, it's the Wolf of God as well. So just, it puts a different perspective on Ethan Chandler and his transformation.
And just creates that epic battle that is coming. It's any type of mythology has to have that epic battle that's on its way, and us as the audience piecing together who all of these characters are and putting them all into their places within this prediction, I suppose, or this prophecy is always really cool in these kind of shows.
Yeah, and the final one is, I just want to note that I love that antagonistic relationship between Evelyn Poole and her daughter Hecate.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's just because it kind of leads into the next few where we see Hecate with a plan of her own.
Even early on in the season, you do see this kind of bubbling away, and it's starting to really kind of show itself now. And we've seen with Evelyn Poole that she's not infallible. So with Hecate kind of nipping at her heels, you kind of sense something's coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just kind of stabbing at her. I think there's a line from Hecate, "Perhaps you aren't as powerful as you thought. Maybe I should try." It's just, shut up, daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, really good.
Or should just throw her out of the voodoo or fetish parlor, which I quite liked.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just remember who commands you. Really enjoyed that. That's it. That's the end of our discussion about episode 8, season 2 of Penny Dreadful, Memento Mori. We'll take a break and we'll be back with season 2, episode 9, and Hell Itself, My Only Foe.
Hi, I'm one of the High Priests of Khonshu Ray, and I have the sacred privilege of providing you, the loony listener, with a podcast honouring Marvel's very own Moon Knight. So join me and a host of others at Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or support the show by becoming a Patreon member. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. It's time to get your Khonshu on.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. We're on to episode 9 of season 2 of Penny Dreadful and Hell Itself, My Only Foe. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Darklings. I am one of your other hosts, John. Yes, come join the merriment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of Putney's freaks. Hello, I'm Ray.
Excellent. Nice to have everybody back for these last couple of episodes of this season as well. It's really, really fun to talk about. We'll kick straight into it, I guess. If you guys are happy to.
Yeah, fire away.
Excellent. The episode was directed by Brian Kirk. This is the third episode he directed of Penny Dreadful, and he also directs the finale of this season as well. I love how they give each of these directors their kind of bucket of episodes where they direct them back to back, so it feels really film-like.
Yeah.
I think each one of them has their own little stamp on what they do with each of the episodes. So Brian Kirk has delivered some of the best episodes, really, of the season. He gave us Nightcomers, the flashback episode, with Patti LuPone in the episode, and he's also got this episode and the finale. So lovely consistency from his work on the show. Also, the showrunner, John Logan, writing every episode, does give that certain vision to the show as well. So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the summary for this episode?
Sure. Ethan and Vanessa's stay at the cottage is interrupted when Ethan's pursuer, Warren Roper, catches up with him. They soon make short shrift of him, but Victor Frankenstein arrives and they return to London to rescue Sir Malcolm from Mrs. Poole. Inspector Rusk is waiting for Ethan, but doesn't arrest him. Sir Malcolm's friends and colleagues agree that they cannot go to Mrs. Poole's house in the night when the witch's powers are strongest, and will instead go in the morning. However, Vanessa seemingly agrees, but leaves the house on her own, intent on saving Sir Malcolm. The others follow, but it's a full moon, and Ethan loses control.
Boo.
I know, boo.
Damn it. Silly episode.
Yeah, stupid.
The impending
Ethan.
doom of the arrival of the full moon.
Yeah, lots going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's kick into our big moments of the episode then. John, do you want to kick us off this time?
Yeah, it is the attack on the Poole villa, in that sense. And, yeah, it kind of relates to our boo hiss, with, you know, we get Sembene's backstory here, just very briefly, but we get a sense of why he's there with Sir Malcolm in London and not in Africa.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. It does give that lovely complication to real life as opposed to the history tales that maybe we get. And also his friendship with Ethan. But at the same time, it is R.I.P. Sembene, as a result of, I suppose, what we were discussing in the previous podcast episode, his stoic bravery, him willing to be unflinching in the face of danger, and to really step up to the plate, when he needs to. But yeah, I mean, coming to Sembene's backstory, you know, those marks on his face, which have, you know, they're fascinating. Is it sort of decorative ritual? What is it? But the marks mean that he effectively was a slave trader, and so was both feared and hated, in his life. And I think this is a really interesting take, for the character because, yeah, unfortunately that dark part in our history is massively complicated. And indeed, I think Sembene is embodiment of that complication around the African slave trade to North America, Caribbean, even into Europe. So, I thought that was really interesting, you know, coming from close to Liverpool, which very much has a lot of its Georgian wealth was founded on slave trading. So it's quite fascinating seeing this I suppose additional complication to the general history given around slave trading, the involvement effectively of of Africans in that, whether willingly or whether through the stick, I suppose, whether through the carrot or the stick.
Yeah, I feel like from Sembene's admission here that it sounds like he went along willingly. He was a local facilitator for the slave trade, but regrets it. It's one of the elements from history that the people that were most significantly involved in the slave trade get away with zero punishment for being involved, yet the local facilitators, because they're there and because they're on the ground and known locally before it began, I suppose, they're the ones that get the maximum amount of punishment. So it feels like he's been banished from South Africa, even though he regrets what he did. He has to live with it, and it feels like he's been banished, and that's why he's with Sir Malcolm here.
Well, as he says, I found kindness in this house, but it's that divide and conquer element. It's finding those local rifts between different parts of Africa where they pit one against the other, and and that divide and conquer rule that used here, or it was used in India, or wherever in that colonial period to pit local against local. And it's a really sad element. And of course, Sembene has found himself involved or a part of that divide and conquer, and so feared and hated in his own country, and is effectively in London as valet to Sir Malcolm, where he has in a sense escaped that. So I thought that it's a nice touch. I like the way John Logan touches on these aspects of history of that time as well. You see that with Lily and the place of women in Victorian society. You see it in a sense with Caliban or John Clare in terms of sort of outsiders, and Mr. Lyle, as well. So I find these touch points that John Logan brings, massively, sort of interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there had to have been something massive, I guess, that was part of Sembene's history, because we were all wondering what is it, and it is quite shocking to think that this guy who's he seems so upstanding to everyone and so kind to everyone has this horrendous history, and for someone to be short of being a mass murderer and being a totally despicable citizen of society, he's done something against his own his fellow countrymen. He's been ostracized as well, which is, he's lost his identity. And he regrets everything. So you can only imagine how heavy that weighs on him, and how much he wants to kind of redeem himself. So again, it really does enrich him as a character. And
absolutely.
And I think added to that as well, I wanted to also just add his relationship with Ethan. I think John Logan's done a fantastic job with building that gradually over the season, if not a little here and there in season one. It really does. So towards the end of this episode, where we see them stuck together, it's kind of fitting that they're both there alone together. It's also as scary as hell. I don't know about you, but the fact that you had Sembene in there and you kind of feel like you're in there with him, you know that Ethan's going to turn because that full moon's coming. And it's, how scary was that? Because there was no way out. I think it was a really great way to end that episode.
It absolutely was, and I was hoping against hope. I did go directly on to the next episode because I was hoping against hope something would happen there. There would be some stop. Sembene would not be killed by Ethan attacking him. Maybe he would also become a werewolf in the future. Maybe that's what happened. He just bit him and he was pulled off him, or something would happen. But no, it's quite a deathly end for Sembene. But very stoic, and as you say, the character himself realizes that he has to sacrifice himself so that Ethan can live and Ethan can fulfill the destiny that he has available to him. I think that's also really important for the character, because he is a very strong character, but the explanation that we get in this episode of him being involved in the slave trade and his regret for it does, I think, really underline why he's able to hang around and be a member of this team with all of these other monstrous people, because he knows himself how monstrous he is for the things that he did. And I think it's a really good explanation as to why he's able to accept what Vanessa's doing, how he's able to accept who Ethan is and Victor Frankenstein and also Malcolm, because he's also done monstrous things in his life, which we just didn't know about till now.
Definitely. And I think coming back to the sacrifice, because ultimately in that correction of the translation by Sir Malcolm in the previous episode to say the wolf of God rather than the hound of God, it is only Sembene that knows who Ethan truly is. Whilst Vanessa may have inklings, and certainly they dance around that at the Cutwife's cottage in Ballantrae Moor, she doesn't know until the moment she sees it in the next episode. So this is real sacrifice, and even that Sembene stops Ethan from killing himself with the bullet. And he says, I am just a man, you have been chosen by God. Again, going back to the translation that Mr. Lyle has done. So this was really sad for me. I was almost thinking, I really hope there is some kind of supernatural element, that, almost kind of Black Panther type thing, that he will somehow get reborn, maybe not as a werewolf, but, I was hoping that there was some element there, but,
I was just thinking the likelihood, that from the stories of werewolves, it is similar to the vampiric power that it can be transferred to somebody else. If you get bitten, you become a werewolf. So I was kind of going, next episode we're going to have two werewolves. Which one's the wolf of God? Kind of thing.
But unfortunately, there is that great shot where you see Ethan taking his takeout, and Sembene's struggling, and then kind of his face and eyes kind of going quite dead looking. So
his takeout, surely you mean his home delivery?
Well, home delivery,
delivered by Hecate,
Deliveroo,
by Hecate,
but I mean, ultimately, this moment where they are trapped together in the spiral staircase, also comes from Hecate's plan against her mother, which involves Ethan. We have Hecate earlier visiting Ethan, indicating that he should not serve the Galilean god, but the winged Lucifer. And this is a plan to effectively trump her own mother. This is a power play between Hecate and Evelyn Poole, of which I think Evelyn Poole is not fully aware of. She knows a game is being played to some extent, and certainly Mr. Lyle does, but she doesn't know the true implication here. And this is bringing the wolf of God into the witch's coven to potentially unleash it on her sisters and mother here. So I kind of like that. Also, Hecate leaving through the mirror was very cool, actually.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought that was superb.
Yeah.
And just to your point about the labyrinth nature of this house, I loved that, where they're all, both Mr. Lyle, Victor, and Sembene and Ethan all coming into a house. It's lovely and dark, it's gothic, but it's labyrinth. That at each turn there's a disorientation to these intruders into the house, and it's really reminiscent for me of Hell House by Richard Matheson, and even then The House of Leaves, that you seemingly, whether it is in reality or just by the trick of geometry, there seems to be this endlessness of corridors and doors within this house, like the TARDIS, effectively. And so this is really, really cool, because those two books, Hell House, Richard Matheson, and House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, are just superb in creating that horror from your home, effectively, or from a house. Really good.
Never read a better horror book than House of Leaves. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommended for anybody who likes reading horror. It's one of the best.
Definitely. And Hell House being the original, obviously by Richard M. Matheson, who also did I Am Legend, which is also about vampires.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Some really good references.
I really love the house as well. I think it really played into this whole, let's get the band together and let's storm the gates. And I loved how there are little the house had character, because if we take Ethan and Timbene, there's the little tricks and booby traps happening, and you've got the witches coming out of the walls. You've got Sir Malcolm in another room somewhere. He's got some other sort of magic cast upon him, and he's dealing with his own troubles. I just love how the house has its own character in it, and it's as dangerous as it is as dangerous as the witches themselves. And in the heart of it somewhere, there's that creepy dollhouse with Evelyn Poole.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt like a bit of Castlevania, or a little bit of exactly like the approach to taking down Dracula, where everybody's going into his mansion and there's something going on in every room to disorientate them or throw them off the scent. So really, really like this in the episode.
Indeed, from the production notes for this, the set designer for the witch's house did the curved corridors to give that sense of endlessness, but also to make it appear bigger on the smaller set that they had to make it on as well. Yeah. So to give that sense of vastness to this huge Victorian villa, but obviously building it on a set. So that trick there is a nice little bit as well.
Definitely. Ray, do you want to take us on to your big moment from this episode?
Yeah, I thought, apart from the obviously storming the witches' headquarters, I thought to take a look at John Clare's story at the side, and there were big things happening there. The big thing for me in this episode was the reveal of, I guess, Lavinia and more of the Putneys, and what they have planned for John Clare. And this was, it was like watching a hunter kind of lead a rabbit to a trap here.
Absolutely.
I remember when I first watched this, I was duped, and I couldn't believe, because she plays it so well, being the really caring, thoughtful, blind daughter, and she leads John Clare in, and bam, he's in there. He's he's the first of one of many freaks that they hope to capture and make money from in Putney's waxworks. So it was her turn of character, and a bit more of the Putneys coming in, and poor John Clare stuck in his cage. It kind of moved that storyline onward. And we did get an inkling of the husband and wife, obviously having other ulterior motives, but Lavinia, that was the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's so brutal of her as well, because I think when you contrast that with the conversation that John Clare has been having with Vanessa when he's been meeting up with her, and the two of them have been talking poetry to each other, you almost felt like Lavinia was also somebody that had that relationship with John Clare, and for her to go, what's that book inside there? And he reaches down to pick it up, and it's like, it's some more of your crap poetry, basically. Not everybody's into poetry like you are. It's so boring when you talk about poetry, and I've had to listen to it over and over again every day until this plan came into action, kind of thing. And it's like a knife into his heart, even just her saying that to him, let alone him being locked up. It's her saying, the friendship you thought you had with me and the connection that you thought we had was all a lie to get you to this point. It's a really, it's like pulling the rug out from underneath him. It's really harsh.
Yeah, I mean, that's twice that a lady has said that to him. Lily in the episode before, having a go at his poetry, and now Lavinia, what did she say? Not everyone shares your mania for poetry. I thought this was really good, because I mean, at the start, I think in episode 1, and he comes to the waxwork, to the Putneys for his job. It's like, this is this new stage. Mr. Putney is immediately, you're kind of going, is this like Vincent from the Grand Guignol? And of course, no, ultimately is not. Where, at the end of season 1, Vincent has to, let Caliban go from his service, slightly reluctantly. Here, Mr. Putney is forcefully keeping, Caliban, or John Clare now, within his service, against his will. And you have that great moment, previously with Mr. Putney, where he talks about, when the devil knocks, that he's not distorted, he's beautiful, a siren. And I think Lavinia here is that siren as she locks him in Mr. Putney's great sort of ballyhoo, his new ballyhoo. And as I suppose there's also the references to maybe, Lily being that siren, or indeed Dorian being that siren as well.
I think John Clare is thinking about Lily when he's saying this. He's thinking about that person that would lure him in there, but it turns out right in his eye line is the actual siren that's luring him to his fate, I suppose. But it's a fascinating conversation. I also like he references, if I was to build my own version of this, it would be Pandora with her box, and inside that box would be a mirror showing your own horror to yourself, effectively. So, once again, the horror of humanity visiting upon the creature again.
Yeah.
He's got such a tough story a lot of times throughout the show. I think you talked about it at the start of the season, right? And were you asking the question, will he trust people? Because everybody seems to be so nice to him.
Exactly.
And look what happens to him once again.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, and there's I like it, that really nice little technique that's used to play on the trope of because we as the viewers were lured in, Lavinia being the blind girl, this thing about she doesn't see his imperfections on the surface level. She sees his true self within. So surely she will get him. That's how I kind of took her at the beginning. And of course she came across like that as well. So, I liked how that was turned on its head. And, and it's Lavinia who is blind, and she's still terrible. Like, she's still horrible.
She's awful. Yes. But, obviously a nature versus nurture question there. Her parents are absolutely horrible as well.
Definitely.
We have Mr. Putney getting so delighted with himself about the success he's making of this House of Horrors that he just wants to make it even more horrific. And it doesn't matter whether he's going to have to entrap freaks, as he calls them. He's going to take everything on board just to make more and more money for himself. And the rest of the family all seem to be on his side. So, really, really sad for poor John Clare. Will he ever find solace? Nobody seems to be really willing to deal with him as a human, or as a being that they can, treat with any kind of kindness. So, sad little moment. Is that it for that point, Ray?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll jump on to my big moment from the episode, because we have the two immortals coming side by side together, the two grotesque immortals coming side by side together. Lily making Dorian join her in her quest for control of the world. I just think it's really important here, because we said there was a great moment within the ball where we had Dorian and Lily dancing, and also dancing around their previous relationship, or their previous moment together, whereas it's all laid out bare in this conversation with Dorian, where he says, do you recognize the room since the ball? And then he goes, I've also had photography sessions in here. Lily, or is it Brona? And then Brona kind of says, or maybe it's some divine admixture of both of those things. So suddenly revealed that she does remember Dorian. She knows everything about what happened to them before. She knows exactly who he is and how monstrous he is. I just really like that they've finally kind of laid it out there, because we didn't know when we had that conversation between the two. You didn't know whether, I think I said, you didn't know whether Dorian has just had so many experiences with so many people that he completely forgot about that one night that he took photographs of the dying Brona, or whether it was something that he absolutely remembered, this massive moment in his history, and that he was fully aware of who she was. So I like that they laid that there. I also like that he's willing to accept her monstrous nature, and she's willing to accept his, and she knows there's something else about him, so bites off his ear and then goes, show me your power. It's so cool.
Yeah, that was go heal yourself, my beloved immortal. For me, I just loved the call out of being immortal here. So, because it's not something I was really thinking about with Dorian, or even say with Lily, but it's this idea of the immortals, Zeus on his mountain in Olympus, or Jupiter in the heavens, this Roman and Greek gods. Yeah. And certainly.
Or Wolverine.
Yeah, the tale of, well, exactly. This tale of these immortals, trying to, challenge humanity from their boredom, and looking down on them and playing with their creations. And whilst that's slightly inverted here with Lily having being created by a human. Nonetheless, I kind of like that idea of how Lily sees herself above humanity, and will now go and play with them in a sense, and how Dorian in any case has been playing with them for however long he's been doing it.
Absolutely. And not only does she see herself above humanity, she also sees herself above Dorian. It's tell me your secrets and kneel to me is the invitation she has. It's actually probably a less attractive offer than she gave to John Clare. John Clare was stand by my side after kneeling to her, and now it's kneel to me and tell me everything about you kind of thing. So it looks like she's about to set up the army of the immortals, basically.
With a bit of rough and tumble with Dorian. Like that is one earlobe nibble for sure.
He does look quite shocked about it. I do get the feeling that while he is healed and restored from the sexual encounters he's had in the past, he had the pretty violent sexual experience with Vanessa, where she was cutting bits of his face with her nails and the knife and that kind of stuff. But I feel like he's never had an arm lopped off and regrown before. So I wonder if having his ear ripped off by Lily, I wonder if he's kind of going, I'm not too sure whether I can grow an ear back. That seems like a massive thing rather than just healing quickly. Growing an ear back seems quite different.
Well, he goes into his secret chamber for the portrait, and I can just imagine the portrait rolling its eyes and going, oh my God, will you not just, a little bit of friendly slap and tickle in the bed, Dorian, not rough and tumble.
Absolutely.
Now I've got to look even more grotesque. No wonder the portrait wants to lunge at him. It's like,
will you just stop it?
I mean, at this stage as well, Lily doesn't know about the portrait, right? So for all intents, it could have been Dorian's twin brother coming out, ta-da!
Exactly.
My injured brother's over there. But I mean, it's really interesting that Lily has chosen Dorian over John Clare, considering that how alike they are, Lily and John Clare. But I think she must be just allured to or attracted to Dorian's nature, which she knows she probably can work with, and he'd be more amenable to doing, to world domination than say John Clare. So, it's a very big moment in the season, because it's these, as you say, two titans coming together, and it's like, oh gosh, you know how bad Dorian is, you know how evil Lily is now. Oh gosh, we're in some trouble here. So, at this stage, I'm kind of like going, where's John Clare? I'm going to be rooting for him now. So,
Yeah, but I suppose that's it, isn't it? Like there's a certain vulnerability to John Clare that Dorian doesn't have. So while Lily and John Clare may have been created in the same way, she has a power and she has a will to take over the world. Yet all John Clare wants is to settle down with the person that was created for him and kill the person that created him, so he can't do it again. That's not Lily's plan. It seems she's much more bent on domination than anything else, and that absolutely matches her quite well to Dorian. But supervillains being created in this episode.
It's
that's my major point from this episode. Any notes from the episode that we haven't talked about?
Oh yeah.
It's one big moment and a couple of notes, John.
Okay,
it's not 7 big moments pushed into notes. Go on, John.
My notes just on Inspector Rusk. I really love this character, because he is menacing, and that there's a real inevitability about him, that he is unstoppable, in his pursuit. And I really, like that. If anything is going to freak Ethan out, it is this, menace that comes from Inspector Rusk, and, none more so than, the fact that he touches on otherworldliness, that he can't put it in a forensic report log or capture it in a photograph, but there is something there that he will get to the bottom of, and, he will get to the bottom of it. And just as then they depart from their meeting, he says, "Good evening, Mr. Ethan Lawrence Talbot." The quarry has been ran to its hole. And no matter what Ethan says, Ethan is quite quippy with Inspector Rusk, trying to sort of divert and distract attention from himself. And he says, and the animal is most dangerous when he's ran to his, when he is cornered. But again, Inspector Rusk, it's that inevitability. It's that total pursuit. He goes, but nonetheless, it is cornered. And, no matter how many people we will lose, we will get the cornered animal. And I really like this aspect.
Response to that as well, though, where he's, the cornered animal is at its most dangerous.
Yes. But that's when he says then, but it's cornered nonetheless.
Yeah.
It is this inevitability of pursuit that Inspector Rusk has. And I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah.
I love these two together.
I really like Inspector Rusk, the character. He's very interesting, very driven. He's very honest. He's got no hidden agenda. It seems he just wants to find out what is happening. But also there was that talk of he talks about his phantom limb.
Yeah.
So there's an element to him that he's amenable to, I guess. I think Ethan asked, are you superstitious as well? There's an element that he will believe like the supernatural and things beyond. And so I don't know. He's just I like his character. His interactions with Ethan are very good as well. And that reveal of the Talbot, if you can just photograph that picture, the reaction of Ethan when he says that,
exactly.
It's like, oh gosh, he's got him good. I mean, if, pictures, it spells it out on his face.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Inspector Rusk is really cool.
I have to say, I do love that in Inspector Rusk, because there is that, there's that line that's probably used in a lot of movies that deal with the supernatural, that I think is evident within this character of Mr. Rusk. This idea that once you eliminate the probable, and all the other causes, then the impossible is the likely only cause for this. And that looks like that's the point of view that Rusk comes from. He will investigate, and he will go down any path. As long as the investigation takes him that way, he will follow the path to whatever the conclusion is, and he doesn't discount anything. So his response to, are you a superstitious man, is not naturally. Yeah. So he's not necessarily superstitious, but he will absolutely follow something if that's where the investigation takes him.
Exactly. And I think that quote, when all things possible have been eliminated, you can only look to the impossible or the improbable. I think that comes from Sherlock Holmes. I think that's a Sherlock Holmes thing. And I think you're right. He's kind of the most pure character, of how he views things, and nothing is off limits.
And also, in fairness, he's the human character who is working for the law and possibly going to put a criminal behind bars. So that should give us all a little sense of happiness that we have somebody out there that's working on the side of normal humans, going to investigate all of these tragic deaths and put a killer behind bars. So it's supposed to be a person that's allowing us to feel a bit more safe in our beds at night as well, because that's his purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think just one final thing on that, on Rusk. I love it because, as you say, he's so human. And I think it was a few episodes before as well, his encounter with Ethan at the waxworks. I just loved it how he's not this machine that is like 3 steps ahead of everyone and knows everything. Like, he's working things out himself. And I loved it when he went up to Ethan and he goes, I know you're involved. I don't know how. I just know you are. And he's got no evidence. He's got nothing to back himself, but, he just follows his hunch. So there's something quite, likable about that nature of someone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before, Ray, about the look on Ethan's face. Well, I think as well, the look on Mr. Roper, right at the start was, really, really good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Roper's death at the beginning. That was, one of my notes as well. It's just that I think, I don't know, it seems that with this being episode 9 already, I didn't know where they wanted to take this, whether he would bleed in over to another season or his ongoing, battle to extradite Ethan would go further. But his death was I found it very abrupt as well. I mean, it being in the opener as well. And so his character, his chapter just closes all of a sudden, even before we really get into the meat of this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are. Do you think this was something that was thought out later on, or do you reckon that would have been? It seemed unplanned. That's what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I think at the time most TV shows were probably in the region of 22 episodes, especially for a second season commission for a show like this. So first season was 8 episodes, which would be like a mini series kind of idea, and then the second season got commissioned for 10, and it feels like they were trying to put in this storyline of Mr. Roper carrying over from the end of season 1. And it does feel like you didn't get enough of what exactly it meant. It is setting up stuff for season 3, but I don't think it was meant to. I think we were supposed to bring some of that into season 2, with why Mr. Roper is chasing them down, some more details about Ethan's past, that it probably didn't fit in with the season. So you're right. The abrupt ending of Mr. Roper, while the scene itself is really brutal, really violent, and really good, it does feel like it comes out of nowhere, considering we waited for 3 episodes for him to wake up from his coma.
Yes.
In the 6th episode, I think he confronts Ethan and tells him what his plan's going to be, and tells him that he has to leave the country. And then now in the 9th episode, he's dead. So it feels like something much bigger was supposed to happen with the storyline, and maybe they just were expanding it to say, if you give us 16 episodes of the season, here's a piece we could explore more. But I'm kind of glad in a way that it didn't, because I think it would completely diverted from the main storyline of the main thrust of the show in this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's abrupt, his death. And I think that is, almost down to this kind of, like Vanessa's brutal here with her stabbing him repeatedly, and her and Ethan almost have this round robin of stab, kick,
Yes.
Which I thought was really kind of, well, it's very well coordinated, but I mean, as kind of murder goes, I think with Vanessa coming at it from the fact that she's read this book, there's something maybe a bit different about her. But with Mr. Roper, I feel he whilst they're not directly connected, his connection is with Inspector Rusk. It is this hounding of the quarry to corner them, and he has cornered them, but unfortunately it's failed. He isn't able to take him back to the US to his father. And of course, you know, it's not spoilers as such, but we see Inspector Rusk being more successful in that matter. So I think it's a parallel of story of you know, the Pinkerton and the Bobby on the beat kind of thing. And that's how I've always seen it. So it is abrupt, and it's a shame to lose Mr. Roper, because that face was really, really good when he takes off the leather mask. Wow. And I like Vanessa's reaction to it, knowing that Ethan had done that. But I suppose it would have taken a long time to construct that, but I thought that was really nice, and I would like to have seen Mr. Roper for longer. And so in that sense, yeah, it is abrupt. It's a shame we lose him, certainly after the reveal of his wounds, from Ethan, and how you really get a sense that disfigurement at the hands of Ethan has changed the game for Mr. Roper. You know, he feels it quite justifiable to threaten Vanessa and the other people, because it's like, you are a monster. You are out of control when you turn. So, I thought this was kind of interesting.
His threat to Vanessa is that he'll have sex with her either before or after he kills her. Like,
no, exactly.
That's monstrous.
It's kind of gone into depravity. But, and I think that's where it, you know, he has been scarred by that encounter, and who wouldn't be, quite frankly. And it contrasts with the cool level-headedness of Inspector Rusk, effectively trying to do the same thing, which is bring him to justice. We're still slightly unclear with Mr. Roper what bringing him back to Daddy actually means. But yeah, as you say, Derek, it sets up season 3. Where we go on a holiday.
I was going to include a note in this episode that I had for the episode, because there are some important things that go on with Malcolm and his family and things that are going on in that room. But that's actually my note for episode 10. So I'm going to hold that back, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. That's it. That's all of our discussion points about Penny Dreadful Season 2, Episode 9. After this break, we'll be back with our discussion about Penny Dreadful Season 2, Episode 10, And They Were Enemies. Here's a message from Ray's other podcast, Last Sons of Krypton.
I am Connor from the House of L.
And I am Ray from the House of Zod.
We are two of the many, many survivors of Krypton's destruction, and we have made our home in Australia, and dare I say, have become Australians, for better or worse. But we have also decided to read Superman comics, read Superman books, watch Superman shows, cartoons, movies, basically everything Superman, and from an Australian perspective as well. Whether you're a seasoned fan, like me,
or whether you are coming in fresh, wide-eyed and wanting to learn more like me, then this podcast is for you. Join us for our bi-weekly adventures available on all good podcast catchers.
So just search for Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. We'll be coming to you from Australia or some cosmic dimension, wherever we are that week.
Up, and away.
Welcome back to the final episode of Penny Dreadful Season 2. We're talking about Episode 10, And They Were Enemies. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Darklings. I'm one of your other hosts, John.
And I am back, Ray, to talk about the finale for this awesome series.
Excellent. Yes, I'm conscious that that some of our listeners are listening to these episodes back to back, so they know exactly who we are. But just in case you mix up some of our voices, I know it doesn't sound very similar to Ray or John, but just good to have our names out there at the beginning of the episode. Anyway, I think we're going to jump straight into this one because it always feels like a bit of a milestone when you get to the end of a show, a finale of a season, especially with a show written by one person like John Logan writing every episode of the show. It feels like you're getting to the end of his vision, the final chapter in this story, in this book. So it feels like a big milestone when we get to the end here. Once again, this episode is directed by Brian Kirk. As I mentioned before, he's directed 4 episodes of the show. So combining the two of them to close off this series is a good way to end it, I think.
Oh, definitely. This was a really good finale with that whole the whole action around Madame Kali's house.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the summary for the final episode of Season 2 of Penny Dreadful?
Sure. At Madame Kali's house, it's left to Vanessa to fight her and her master. So Malcolm and Victor Frankenstein are immobilized by hallucinations where those they have wronged torment them. Ethan, for his part, is still under the effect of the full moon, and elsewhere, John Clare learns the new rules now that he has been imprisoned in the cellar at Putney's Wax Museum. Dorian and Lily are prepared to take on the world. They certainly are.
Yes, they are. Absolutely. Lots of stuff happened in this finale episode. The way we've been talking about these episodes, because it's a rewatch podcast, we've been picking out one point that we wanted to talk about each episode. I found this really difficult because there's one big thing that's happening in the center of the episode, but loads of other stuff going on around all of the characters and closing out their season 2 of the show. I think I had a question when we were going through season 1 of the show as to when it got renewed and when people were waiting. It actually got renewed 4 episodes into season 1 that there was going to be a season 2. So they did lay out some groundwork in season 1 for the second season. This feels more like an ending at the end of season 2. It feels like an ending for the characters where you may never see them again. Now, I think, again, they knew there was going to be a season 3 by the time it all had aired, but it does feel like they're closing it off to say goodbye to everybody. So it does feel like much more filmic in some ways. And it feels much more like the end credits roll and you may not see them again for 3 or 4 years for the next season to come out. So difficult to pick a big moment, but each of us has. Ray, do you want to kick us off with your big moment? Because I think you got the major moment from the episode.
Yeah, I took it. I just want to say, like, Eva Green, Vanessa, she can look so beautiful, but she can also look very scary. And absolutely. I loved this scene where she basically has a conversation with Lucifer, the devil, through the doll, and it's more of a negotiation and I guess a temptation from the devil, to Vanessa to claim her soul. What I found impactful for this was that she rejects the devil, and what she says when she does it, again, it just harks back to my, initial impressions of her being this powerhouse and something that's beyond all these other great powers. So basically, the devil is trying to claim a soul, and it comes down to a kiss, and all you have to do is kiss the doll, and everything's, hunky dory. I get what I want, and you get a life. She actually sees a life with Ethan, these possibilities, all these temptations, and she rejects it. And she says something like, I reject you. What makes you think that I want a normal life in the first place? This is who I am. And I think that just resonated a lot. It kind of shows the amount of thought that she's put into it and the depths of where she thinks she is with this. Basically, she can't go back, and she's just damned anyway. I love this turn of fate, and she just stands up to this, to the devil, and she breaks him literally, the face.
Yeah. Absolutely, right through the face of the scorpion.
Absolutely.
The scorpion's pouring out from the inside as well. It's so interesting. And, the layering of this show from John Logan, right back from the possession back in episode 8 of season 1, this comes back up again from Vanessa, where she says, "It's my soul. You can't take it unless I give it willingly. You have to take it from me, but it's mine, and that will always be mine. No matter what you say to me, I will not make the choice to transfer this over." It's something that's echoed right the way back to then. And also that she has changed quite significantly throughout this series. We've seen the build-up of knowledge within the magic arts that she used, the dark arts that she's used, the murder that she's done, where Ethan spurned her and effectively said, "You can never come back from this. This is all playing into where she is." As she says, she couldn't possibly go and be a housewife at home sitting with the 2 kids and Ethan. That's not where her life is destined to go now. She's taken a different path already. So it's fantastic. And wow, that Verbus Diablo screaming match between the two of them. It's coming so guttural from inside Eva Green. It really does feel like the devil's speaking through her at moments. That she's just does a fantastic job. Such a powerful scene of the two of them screaming at each other, which is both played by Eva Green, of course, where she plays the devil and devil through the ventriloquist doll. I'm presuming if a ventriloquist doll asked you to kiss it, John, and you would get your wildest dreams, you would also reject that too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's just say, this thing talks, okay? That was freaky enough for me, let alone where I just wondered whether this wooden tongue was going to come out of the doll, as they're kind of leaning in, for the kiss, before they have the Verbus Diablo off, I suppose. I thought the doll it's just so well done. Again, some of the extras from the Blu-ray shows how they made this, where they actually did a full scale mold of Vanessa, or of Eva Green, I should say, and then just scaled it down within proportion to this doll, and that's why it looks so absolutely like her. And I think that's what makes it so freaky. But I love the fact that it talks whilst also hating that at the same time. And, it refers to Vanessa as Amonette here. And, makes the point that the moment you spoke the Verbus Diablo, you extended your powers to kill. And I think sort of just, it makes sense with Mr. Roper, I suppose, from the previous episode, as well, why she was able to maybe change in that way. But then that contrast with the fact that Lucifer here is really banking on what he describes as an old dream, that dream is for her to be normal, and hence going to that very bright and white temptation of Lucifer to be married with Ethan, with kids, and I suppose talk endlessly about hippopotamuses and stuff like that.
That sounded really like you said Lucifer was going to get married to Ethan with kids. You mean Vanessa?
Yeah, exactly.
Temptation to Vanessa.
I'm sure Lucifer's tempted by Ethan, as we all are, to be honest. But yes, and then just that kind of reverse, because like Lucifer makes the point, you have to take it willingly. He feels that this temptation is the one that she isn't going to be able to resist. He's not going to crawl around on his hands and knees begging for loyalty. It has to be given willingly. Then he gets effectively that knockback, as you say, Ray. Mm-hmm. She goes, "I know who I am," and this idea that she doesn't want to be normal. That he's kind of played the wrong deck here as Lucifer. Yeah. That temptation of normality is not something that she maybe any longer wants. She's happy to be this different oddity or different person. And so just the whole thing of the doll fracturing and all the scorpions sort of rushing out, and then that as Madame Kali hasn't delivered on her promise to Lucifer, right, that she begins to age at the same time where Hecate kind of unleashes her plan and the Wolf of God. And oh my goodness, what a great kind of moment where the throat is ripped from Madame Kali, and there is a scene of her still lying on the floor later on where you can see right down her windpipe. I think she had poached eggs for breakfast from what I could see down her esophagus to her stomach, because that is like a proper clean throat rip. I thought that was awesome. The kind of constructed, and of course that breaks the spell for Victor and Malcolm at the same time, which is beneficial for them, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when Ethan comes in and slices her throat, it doesn't seem that bad to begin with. But then, as you say, John, you get that glorious shot at the end where she's just lying there and she's fully decapitated. And yeah, full credit to the props and special effects department, or the makeup or whoever does it. It's, really detailed. But I love it.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah, it's like most of her throat is gone.
Yeah.
You really see down.
Absolutely. And speaking of credit to the people involved in this show, like this scene, a doll talking to your major character as your finale. How bad could this have gone? Like, I mean, how poorly could it have come across on screen, if not in the hands of these very talented people that worked on the show? Because, a doll talking to a person as being embodied by the devil, I think we've had that in other shows. I remember in Buffy, they had the ventriloquist dummy possessed by a demon before. It just doesn't come across as terrifying as this. I think just the creation of the doll of Vanessa in itself being as creepy as it is a great touch, but it must be in the performance of Eva Green, and the writing of the episode and the filming of this particular scene as how terrifying it comes across, because it's so good as a finale.
I think it's the construction of it as well. I mean, Buffy didn't show babies being kind of kidnapped, sliced and diced, and then sort of hearts sort of being put in. Like, that there's a genuine sort of terror around, not only the practice of the enchantments and the voodoo element to it, but just how these fetishes are created, that has been built up. So in that moment, what's gone into creating this, through the attack on the house, getting the locket of her, having the baby, kidnapped, and effectively, pillaged of, its heart. So it's that element of it as well, that it's a fitting vehicle, I suppose, for Lucifer, that such depravity allows him to exist on the plane of earth, to come out from hell. So it's that. I'm glad Buffy didn't do that, actually.
Can I just bounce some thoughts then? What did you think of those scorpions coming out of the doll? Was that a manifestation of Lucifer, or was that something that was part of Vanessa? Because I was just trying to understand it. Like, as I get the symbolism, obviously, because of Vanessa's little scorpion reference, and but she absorbs one of them. I don't know. Cool. What are your thoughts on just all the spewing of scorpions out of the doll? What did it mean?
Yeah, I felt like it is her power. That's what she effectively placed inside of this doll to destroy it from the inside out, almost.
Yeah.
That's the spell that she's doing, I think.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not 100% clear as to what it is, but I just feel because that's been the manifestation of her protection has always been the scorpion, that it's something coming from her. One of the other things I was also interested in that scene as well, I think you mentioned it, John, that she's referred to as Amunet by Amun-Ra, by this creature. I'm trying to work out in my head, does that mean that she is the reincarnation of this deity for these centuries, millennia, I think, back from when Amunet and Amun-Ra were ruling over the Egyptians. But I'm not sure whether that's very clear, or is she just Vanessa and he's projecting that he wishes she was Amunet, his eternal partner. I'm not sure.
So I took this that she's not Amunet, but that's how he refers to her, because you have that moment from Mr. Lyle talking about the women that have been there in this role from different cultures, of which Amunet is from the Egyptian culture, but he talks about others from the Bible, from Persian culture, from Greek culture, these women that have been destined. And so in a sense, this is the Victorian culture of that. And what Lucifer is recognizing is that Vanessa is able to contain and in effect control evil here.
So it's someone that represents Amunet is what he's attracted to, not necessarily that Amunet is passing.
No, exactly.
Woman as the women die. Okay.
So that each culture and at each moment in time, there is this type of person and they are spoken about. And so in this modern world, it's Vanessa, I suppose, that has been chosen. And I think to your point, Ray, the scorpions coming out of the doll is in effect her, whatever enchantment or whatever words from the Verbus Diablo is a manifestation in breaking Lucifer's power here, in this world of men and women. Because, so the scorpion is seen as this protector on the journey to the afterworld or to death, whether the spirit or the internal organs from Egyptian culture. So this is a protective kind of symbol as we've seen. And that melding into a hand, which I thought was just really cool, is kind of just, I suppose making that point again that they're becoming one, this legend of the scorpion and Vanessa. Effectively she's leveled up here. She's gone all powerful. She can take on the big boss. So I think that's where I kind of took all the scorpions kind of coming out was a manifestation of her enchantment.
Yeah, I mean, that makes the most sense as well. One little thing that was just kind of itching at me was I guess a couple of episodes ago, Evelyn Poole produces a scorpion to Sir Malcolm as well. So, I'd always associated the scorpions with Vanessa, but Evelyn Poole's given it to Malcolm, and it seems to have some sort of, malevolent intent because it's a precursor to him, fighting his demons. She says,
that's right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Evelyn Poole, when she unfolds her hand and puts it on his knee, she says, "I will leave you with your little scorpion." So she's saying this is Vanessa.
Oh, okay, right.
And she goes, "Be careful of her because she has a sting." Or there is the sting, like the sting of your memories, and then right. Cue, Malcolm gets all his coffins all at once, and the old zombie, the zombie Murrays come for a family reunion. Can you imagine if that happened?
Well, cue
Christmas dinner, the zombie Harrisons and O'Neills.
It's bad enough having all the Harrisons and O'Neills live at Christmas dinner, so I can't imagine the zombie versions of all of my family being together as well.
At least they won't eat much.
Exactly, yeah, you don't have to shop for much, so.
Exactly.
Just have one chicken for everybody rather than a massive turkey.
Yeah. Raw chicken as well. You don't even have to cook it. Brilliant.
No, the chicken would be for us, John, because we're not the zombies.
Okay, yeah, that
Zombies
makes
don't eat
sense.
chicken, as far as I know. Cue my major moment from the episode, because mine is about Victor and Malcolm being confronted, I suppose, by their own demons who've been brought back to life in this room. I think this scene is absolutely terrifying and so well written. I really love, as you have both sides, you have the family, you have Malcolm's wife and children trying to force him to see what he's done in his life. He led to Peter's death, his son, while they were away, by not protecting him from the elements, by not protecting him from what was going to happen to him in South Africa. You have his daughter, who he shot in the head, effectively, as she says, but even before that, he allowed her to get taken by the creatures, by the vampires. And then his wife arrives, and his wife effectively was left on her own to deal with the abuse of Evelyn Poole, someone that was just trying to win Malcolm, so nothing to do with his wife at all. She wasn't responsible for it. And that moment of her confronting Malcolm and then raising her neck slightly as blood drips from her cut throat is terrifying. It's absolutely scary. And then it cuts to the other side of the room with Victor going through his hallucinations of all of his children. The return of Proteus we have here, the return of Lily and John Clare, or Caliban, all coming back to him saying, "We are your children. You created us." Caliban saying, "I'm your brother. I'm the one that has experienced everything you've experienced." Lily effectively saying, I'm your master almost. And Proteus saying, "I'm your son. You are my father." But what I love about it is you can almost understand why both of these characters, Malcolm and Victor, go to take their own lives. They are convinced that this is their time. They're convinced that they should join their versions of their families. Just all it takes is just one slash, one shot to your head with a gun, and then you can be with us forever. You can almost see how they're being pushed over the edge into taking their own lives. And it does, I think, lead to the later scenes with Victor going to visit Lily and trying to reconnect with her. And then when he's shunned, our final scene with Victor is then him shooting up morphine into his fingers. He's now possibly not going to survive into season 3 because he's been rejected by the family. That this vision is effectively saying his family want him back and want him to die and be reborn into them. And while he tries to reconnect with them, they reject him again. So it seems like he's lost everything by the end of this series. So overall, that whole section between Victor and Malcolm being approached by those family connections and effectively going to suicide, I think is just a really interesting way to close out their stories for this season. It's scary and creepy and so well done.
Definitely.
And great to see Proteus back, because he was a great character in those 2 episodes.
Yeah, I was really pleased they brought Proteus back into that mix, into that torment for Victor. Because I feel that's almost maybe the one that might torment him the most, given he seemed to have positive feelings towards them as opposed to like running as far away as he could from his first creation to begin with. And I suppose his sense of jealousy now with Lily and Dorian. But
I love that he says to the creature, "It's you that killed him. I didn't kill him." And Caliban goes, "Well, you made me and I killed him. So you did kill him." Basically. So it's still back on you, Victor. You're still the one that did all this. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I really like about these scenes is just that duality, the reflection of Victor into Malcolm and Malcolm into Victor, because there's been a lot of those father-son conversations between these two. And so for then these two to be experiencing this horror show of their past coming to haunt them, and you get that sort of reflection of, of Malcolm's family saying, one last great adventure into the unknown to join the great explorers so that he can be at peace. And you have Lily, Proteus and Caliban saying, "One last experiment, Father, to join the poets," which I think, again, to be at peace. It's really good. I love how, how will they atone? And both of them are this, how is Malcolm going to atone? How is Victor going to atone? And I do love Gladys, saying the final tombstone on the hill to Sir Malcolm. I loved this actress playing Gladys because, again, just a small role, but I think she really brings this sense of just abandonment from Malcolm, and how she played, in previous episodes, being harrowed by Evelyn Poole with the brain acupuncture in her fetish doll. I think she's been really good, and I think the delivery of that line by her was just really really good.
Yeah, I mean the parallels, as you say, John, there between Sir Malcolm and Victor, essentially with family, and Victor's children, and Lily can argue the fact that she's a bit more than that, or John Clare says, "I'm your brother." So there is that responsibility that both Victor and Sir Malcolm have on their family. I love that parallel as well. Seeing Proteus, as you mentioned, do you guys get that feeling as well? I love it when you're so drawn into a scene, right? And these characters are apparitions, right? They're hallucinations. Mm-hmm. And you kind of think, okay, this is just, Sir Malcolm and Victor in this scene, and these are just apparitions. But in reality, these actors are actually acting in this episode as well. I know it's a weird thought. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever get that kind of thought. It's like,
You're absolutely right. Like they're acting different versions of themselves. They're acting Victor's version of what he would think they're like. So it's also a different version of what Billie Piper has been playing in Lily for the last 2 seasons. It's a different version of what Rory Kinnear has been playing the creature as, because now he's playing the creature as how Victor sees him in his mind. You're absolutely right. And same thing with Malcolm's family. The actors playing his family are playing the fears up from what Malcolm would be seeing if they had the opportunity to speak again. So I love these scenes, and it is fascinating to see how they perceive their failures, I suppose, because that's their big issue. Those two characters is they failed everybody around them, and that's and seeing them tear their brains apart, I suppose, is how scary this scene plays out. Yeah, really, really good.
And it's also that great temptation from Lucifer, the devil, as well, with this driving them to suicide, and that's the intent, obviously, but kind of sugarcoating it with the idea of, join us. You can, trying to fool Sir Malcolm and Victor. And I love this way that it's not like it's never been done before, but I just love the way that the tactics of Lucifer and the devil is a lot more kind of underhanded, rather than just the brute force of it's just an evil being that say maybe in season 1 is just about the physicality and the attacking and just the terror. This devil is a lot more conniving and is trying all these things, and he does it with Vanessa as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it is just really well done. And as you said there, Ray,
So that was my major point from this episode of the season, just how we end Victor's story at the end of season 2. I don't know if there's a season 3, whether Victor Frankenstein would appear back in it, or whether somebody's just going to find his body somewhere. Yeah,
well, there's definitely the sense that he's overdosing here. And just to say, I did like the touch of him injecting between his fingers, because he's effectively destroyed any other major sort of vein or artery that he can do it to, for sure. And certainly following his Memento Mori with his creatures and that final encounter with Lily and Dorian, I'm not surprised, but he probably goes that way, actually, because even we have that nice sort of intimate moment with him and Sir Malcolm as well, in Sir Malcolm's study. But I'm hoping that he it's not fatal, that he just wakes up with a new spur to probably create another one. You know what he's like. He's a bit obsessive. Another
maybe
one.
This one will be better.
Yeah, maybe this one will be better. As he just keeps plonking them out. But I mean, ultimately, Lily, does want him,
yes.
you know, as well. And I suppose this is coming to my point, which, I get the Lord of the Rings Return of the King moment with all these endings for everyone. Mm-hmm. And dare I say it, everyone does get an ending. I've called it AAA just, to give it some structure, because we do see a lot of the characters in their ending leaving on ships for various places, of which one is Africa, one is America, and it seems like one is the Arctic. I did like Caliban's one, that because he says he's leaving for a desolate shore to Vanessa in the colorific arches underneath the railway line. And I did like that description. It immediately made me feel like he was referencing the island of Dr. Moreau, that he was going to this shore, of this island filled with creations from the mind of a mad scientist, in this case, Dr. Moreau, but obviously him coming from Victor, going
to find the monsters.
Yeah, finding those monsters. So, but it's not that kind of tropical island. He's off to the Arctic, this desolate shore of isolation. And even seeing that ship, I didn't catch the name of the ship, but I immediately thought of HMS Terror, which is a great name for a Royal Navy ship that tried to find the Northwest Passage around the Arctic, north of Canada, and effectively got lost, and those great kind of superstition moments. But
it also turned into an absolutely terrifying TV show as well.
It did, yeah, exactly. God, the Victorians were good at kind of creepiness. And I like this. He's kind of going off to be alone for a while. He's kind of spurned Lily. He's seemingly not taking up her offer to join them, and to conquer. So I thought that was really nice. I liked Sir Malcolm, I suppose in a sense, has come to peace with himself here. He's and I like the fact that it's connected in with both his family but also Sembene as well. Sembene is really, really dead here. Absolutely. And there's a moment which I really liked, actually, that Sir Malcolm touches his forehead and closes his eyes. Yes. And I thought that was really nicely done by Timothy Dalton. There was real kind of emotion there for me. And he's kind of on a twofold mission in traveling to Africa to try and put his past behind him and to be true to his family and Sembene, which is to return Sembene to Africa, but also to collect his son Peter from the shores of Lake Tanganyika.
He's talked about that mission a few times. He wanted to bring Ethan along with him, and everybody was saying it was just a fancy. He wasn't going to do it at all. So it does feel like he's now about to accomplish that mission, about to go to South Africa and collect the body of his son. But is there anybody that Sir Malcolm is even tangentially connected to that's still alive? Like, even, obviously Evelyn has lost her head in this episode.
Vanessa is the only
as well. Vanessa's the only one, and she's turned to darkness effectively. She's, she's kind of saying in this episode she's rejecting the devil because she's now more powerful than that effectively. So, I don't really want to be friends with Malcolm anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. I think, it's only Vanessa, and I suppose for Vanessa's ending, she's really left at Sir Malcolm's home here. I do like she says, I've ran from the darkness for so long only to find more darkness. And it seemingly that beautiful normal life of her and Ethan there's no hope for, at least, for Vanessa. And, in terms of their story, they truly are kind of cleaved away from one another here. Cause Ethan is on a boat, destined for North America, or America, to keep the A theme going. And I really like this, that he hands himself in ultimately to the police. He confesses his crime to Inspector Rusk. He believes he's going to have the quick, retribution of the rope, and not the long drawn out guilt. I think that Inspector Rusk talked about previously.
Massive applause to Inspector Rusk. Oh, that's all very nice, Ethan, that you've come to turn yourself
exactly.
in, but you're already being recalled to America.
Yeah.
Warrant just came in today. Sorry, I didn't get the chance to tell you before you spilled your guts and told me all of the horrible things you did, but I did like hearing it.
Yeah, well, Ethan says make it quick. He thinks this is his way out.
Yeah.
This is effectively a suicide bid for Ethan, and he's not going to be given that satisfaction. And Inspector Rusk is like, there will be no hanging. Here's the extradition orders. You're going home to America. And so we see him caged as well, like an animal on the ship. So again, this is very much as well going to feed into the third season, where we get to travel away from Victorian London to the world of this new country that is expanding westwards across North America. Yeah. So that's a really kind of interesting ending as well. And then I suppose we've touched on Victor as well, his final ending as well already.
It's good that you point out that he's trapped like a caged animal here, because you presume, being on a ship to America, a couple of weeks across the ocean, he'd be in the brig, he'd be in, a normal prison on board the ship. But he's crouched down on the floor as they're all staring at him in this cage that would be for a wild animal. So it does feel like he's being dragged off to the circus, to another country or something.
Yeah.
It's a pretty brutal way for his story to end, but really good that Inspector Rusk got his man as well. I thought that was a really good.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I was very satisfied with Inspector Rusk's. You can see the glee that he had when he rejected what Ethan wanted to be done to him. Basically it's a fate worse than death for Ethan, this extradition back to America. So I know it's a little cheeky, but I did like that from Inspector Rusk. Absolutely. I just want to take it back also, John, to, cause you're talking about, this relationship with Vanessa and Ethan and this tragedy that life will never happen as well. I found this conversation that Vanessa final conversation she has with John Clare, in that area. Oh, so sad. It's so tragic as well, because essentially they're both sad. I mean, previous times we see them, they're quite happy. Vanessa's so affectionate and comforting towards him. But now both of them are quite miserable, and they're both coming off very, very bad events that have just occurred. And there's even a point where John wants to, as you say, he wants to go away, he wants to flee. But there's a final little spark in him going, why don't you join me? Because he can recognize this kindred spirit, in Vanessa. Unfortunately, she rejects that as well, because she's got her own things going on. And I find it just so tragic, because these two beings are they play off each other so well, and they work so well together. But they can't have a relationship together. I just find it was a very emotional, very well done scene. And I think the basis of why they probably tried to get Vanessa and John, in with dialogue, in the season 3 for the season to come, because they just act so well together. Brilliant actors, both of them.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, it's where I suppose we also get that insight from Vanessa, where she says, I've lost God, I've lost my immortal self. It's that, I do feel like in some respects, when we leave Vanessa, after John Clare, it's like she's almost taking on a, Professor Van Helsing role. It's that she has taken on evil, but it's almost to turn it back on itself. It's like she is this vampire hunter, but more than that, it's just for evil. I think maybe it is the idea that she knows that there is one more to deal with, which is the brother cast out onto Earth. But,
although I thought it was quite evocative that her final moment in the episode ties back to the first episode of season 1, where we saw her praying at the crucifix at the beginning of season 1, and now she's taking it down off the wall and throwing it in the fire.
Yeah.
She's effectively cutting ties with her old self, cutting ties with God. It's massive change for this character, Vanessa. I do like that line when she's talking to John Clare, where she says to him, "I think you're the most human man I've ever known." And he's saying to her, no matter how far away you walk from God, he's waiting ahead. I think those are beautiful touches between those two characters, giving solace to each other in some ways, but she can't really go further from God than taking the crucifix off the wall and burning it. Like, that seems like a massive choice for the character.
But it's almost, you can return. Like, she's had to imbue herself, with the dark magic and so on from that book left by Joan Clayton. But he's saying he will always be ready to take you back if you, I suppose, repent. It's interesting, and I suppose it will play out in season 3. But I like that it hangs a bit with Vanessa because she has always been the most mysterious, the most difficult to read. I even like that Mr. Lyle gets a little moment with Victor as well. Just again, it's Lord of the Rings, Return of the King endings here. We've got to go through literally everyone.
Fellowship is broken. Yes.
Dare I say it? They go into the West as well. But there we go. And he gets that moment where it's almost like, well, we're the two kind of most normal, if they can be described as that. But, that offer of friendship between the two, that Mr. Lyle says, you can always come to me as a friend, to Victor, to Victor in that moment.
I like that it was underlined, because we did mention before about, Mr. Lyle hiding his Jewish practices in the basement when he was preparing for the attack from the Nightcomers. And I do like that it's called out in this episode that Mr. Lyle needs to protect that he is Jewish, within society in the Victorian era, because it was something that would have been held against him. And I like that he has that connection with Victor to say, just please keep this secret, because I can't have this known about me. Because we weren't sure whether we were just reading the scene right the last time it happened, whether it was just part of the ritual that he was doing, that he needs to be away from people, or whether he was keeping this other secret about himself. So I just thought it was important to underline it in case we were getting it wrong last time. So we weren't. That's good.
Yeah. And even with Dorian and Lily, they are, I suppose, bloody dancing again. That hallway, or that ballroom, has seen a lot of blood, but I love the fact here, and part of the reason why Victor does try and maybe kill himself is that this encounter where, he goes to kill Lily and Dorian with a bullet for each of them. But they are the immortals, and they just stand there and kind of look at him and, almost pretend that he's not there. They're discussing him whilst ignoring him about whether they should finish him off now or leave it till later, or it's the foot and the ant, do you crush it? I suppose. And that's the kind of feeling that you get here, with them. I love the fact that she keeps him. She doesn't kill him now because it will be of use in creating, I suppose, her army of the dead, or of the reborn. But the great visual of this is that all the while they're discussing it, the camera pans back, and the shot that Victor has inflicted on the both of them is beginning to materialize on their back, as the bullet wound has gone through, and you have the blood streaking down the white tailcoats of Dorian and the white trail of Lily, as then they dance, and it's all just pouring out of them, their blood. So what a fantastically horrific image to be left with, these two in pure white, but bloody and red, stained.
Yeah, I guess that portrait is going to take another battering.
The portrait's probably there going, guns, oh my goodness, can you imagine when the machine gun comes in, that portrait is just like gonna, no. other grenade.
I thought Victor was, when I first watched this, I thought he was dead for all money. I mean, I couldn't see how he was going to get out of this. These two immensely powerful beings, immensely evil, and then just talking in front of him. You know, should we just kill him now? I was expecting a short, quick, sharp, just like a snap of a neck or something. So kind of glad that he did survive it, but I mean, poor Victor, he's at the total pits. I mean, and now he's, at the whim of Lily, expected to make an army of immortals, and he's been spurned by her. I'm assuming one and only chance at love has been utterly demolished, So yeah, you got to feel for Victor, but it was a very cool scene. And yeah, visually, John, the blood and the white, was just really, and it's the first time we've actually seen, I guess, Dorian in his immortal state. I mean, he's had his ear bitten off. He's, talked about stuff that's happened to him, but it's the first time we actually see physically him being shot and him just standing up and not really worried at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's brought that power out in him, really, is what it seems like from Lily, that she's really brought that confidence out in him that no matter what happens, I'm going to live through it. So, it's like he's a terrifying character when you think of his version of immortality. It's not that he just lives forever as a young man. It looks like he can survive anything as well. So there's something different about that. It means he doesn't have to be even as protective as he has been in the past of himself, or his body, and putting himself into certain situations. Maybe he's going to go skydiving without a parachute next time, because if he can survive that, then he can survive anything.
Absolutely.
So that's what it kind of feels like. But loads of stuff in this episode, I know. Is there any other notes that we haven't talked about that we wanted to mention? I'll just jump in with one because a favorite moment for Mr. Lyle in this episode as he kills one of the nightcomers and says, "Never underestimate the power of a queen with lovely hair, my dear." Great, Mr. Lyle.
Excellent stuff.
That's as close as close as you're going to get to a Hollywood kind of one-liner,
Absolutely. Although I would watch his adventures taking out witches all across the world.
Absolutely.
Delivered lines like that.
Skipping along on his bed of lavender with his two fishes.
There you go.
For sure. I like Hecate, burns the house down, leaves a crispy Kari there, but takes the old takes the implements in order to continue her mother's fetish.
Bag of
tricks. Toolbox. Yeah. I just like the little note. I love the classic look of the werewolf or the Lupus Dei. Not a full blown wolf, he's got that kind of, I don't know, very human like face. He's always had the long hair, I guess, but very kind of classic look. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah. They did a really good job. It really does feel like a much, I'm trying to think the kind of Hollywood Universal Monsters, wasn't it? That's the version of the werewolf we have here. Yeah, I think he looks cool.
He does.
I've mentioned a number of times that there are terrible ways of doing a werewolf on screen. There have been many examples of it, and what they did with this version is scary when he opens up and shows how wide his mouth is with all the teeth inside as he's about to tear into his victims. I think that's a good scary version of it. But the design otherwise is also really, really good. So really enjoyed it.
I just have one final note. I do like, that in the same way as Kellogg's Rice Krispies, the Putney family does go snap, crackle and pop, with the retribution of, Caliban.
Wow.
I thought that was just, not to say that, I should, sort of welcome this kind of behavior, but it felt like retribution for Caliban, where he just simply takes the steel door off its hinges. Yes, it is a snap of Mrs. Putney's neck, a crackle and pop of Mr. Putney against the archway. But he leaves Lavinia to effectively feel her way around in the darkness, and you hear her screaming as he leaves the Putney family waxworks. So it felt like justice here for Caliban, even though it was a vengeance, I suppose. You have Mr. Putney there all kind of puffed up with his new suit, offering him this deal, and yet he's a bit like the Pirates of the Caribbean. He's done the hinges on the cell incorrectly, so he can just lift them off and escape.
Well, I think that's just the power. I think he was just waiting for his moment. But there was definitely, as he kind of calls them closer to give more information about the deal that the Putneys have for John Clare, I was just expecting him to grab the two of them through the bars and kill them because that smack them off the bars. But as he gets out and just snaps the neck of Mrs. Putney and then repeatedly smashes the face of Mr. Putney against the wall until he dies, it's as brutal as it needs to be for what these people are doing. And fair dues to John Logan for writing a couple of lines for Lavinia as well, as she still mentions her disdain for the beast that is John Clare, and then realizes that the rest of her family are dead. So you don't actually feel any sympathy for the screaming blind girl as she finds her family.
Exactly.
He has put some stuff in there for her.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny in the sense that, in case you didn't, or in case you had forgotten how bad she is, she just keeps on insulting him, as she kind of walks through that space. So just so you know that she is a bad character. And then,
absolutely.
I don't know. I was thinking as well, it's a terrible thought as well, but I was thinking, did he leave a loose end? Could Lavinia come back and somehow wreak some sort of havoc to John? I doubt she would, but, that's the, I guess the darker side of me thinking, he should have just cleaned them all out.
He should have killed them all. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any last notes about the finale of season 2 of Penny Dreadful?
Yeah, I just thought a really nifty little reference as well that John Logan injects is that of John Merrick, in the Putney Waxworks, also known as the Elephant Man. A true story, very sad story as well, hideously deformed. David Lynch directed a film about it, which is very cool. Highly recommended if anyone hasn't watched it yet. But he kind of rises above his deformity. So he was, I guess, around the Victorian time, and it's nice that he gets reference, with the Putneys, albeit amongst the freaks. As they call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there is a little reference there to the limbless boy in an apple cart.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the basis of upsetting the apple cart. Whilst it's an economic thing, it was that, certain traders, we still have traders in Dublin that use actually prams to sell fruit and veg that go around the fruit market, and that the carts would be these kind of things. And for a lot of the disformity, obviously no medical care, that you would have their deformed sort of children on the apple cart to move them round, and they would lose trade and business to those apple carts that were just literally an apple cart and not an apple cart, and effectively a wheelchair as well.
It's just fascinating where these phrases come from. I would never have thought that's where a phrase like that came from. Yeah.
So, and that was the prevalence of disformity in London in the Victorian period, before proper kind of universal healthcare or whatever. And just the poverty. So, and lots of accidents, like a lot of, children were used in factories, certainly in amongst the cotton, the weaving and all that. And, these were very dangerous machines, and there'll be a lot of, sort of handless or limbless, sort of children from that.
Scary as hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, off to Henry Street to buy our apples 5 for 50, John.
Yeah, the grapes and the pears.
There you go. Overall, gentlemen, let's close out season 2 of Penny Dreadful. Overall, what's your thoughts on the season? Ray, as you're the guest for our seasons of Penny Dreadful, why don't you kick us off? What do you think of season 2 of Penny Dreadful?
Yeah, I thought it was a very solid and a very highly polished and top quality season. Utterly enjoyed it as well. For those that love season 1, you won't be disappointed, because it retains so many elements of what I imagine you'd love from season 1 in season 2. If I had to, I guess, pick between one of them, I still like season 1, in the fact that I felt it was a lot more compact. And that's nothing to say that season 2 is weaker for having, broader stories. But yeah, I mean, we've got a bigger cast. We've got new characters like Rusk and Roper coming in. We're delving more into characters' backstories. So things are expanding, and there are a lot of characters here that things need to expand on. So it becomes a larger canvas in season 2. But I don't know. I just like the compactness of season 1, and that simple kind of plot thread of bringing a band together and having them battle evil was really cool. But no, loved the villains here, the witches. Evelyn Poole is fantastic. Performances from everyone, I'd say. Everyone brings their A game. Really great. Also, we get a couple of, I guess, similar things with like standalone episodes here, similar to season 1. I think it was episode 5 of season 1, which showed Vanessa's backstory, and her going through the mental asylum. Season 2, we get the brilliant episode 3, which is one of my favorites, of the cut wife and Vanessa again. But yeah, so a lot to love about it. But yeah, overall very solid.
Excellent. John, what's your thoughts overall on season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with Ray enough, actually. I think it's, everyone progresses and develops, each of the characters, that were there in season 1. And it's, again, hugely strong performances with Eva Green. Okay, I don't think there's necessarily a seance moment, and there's not a possession moment for maybe, in the final episode where she is combating Lucifer and her fetish doll. There is that, but I just felt you may not get so much of that, but you have that performance with the cut wife, with Joan Clayton, and both her and Patti LuPone are just really, really good. And the performances are absolutely as spot on, as ever. Yeah. I really like that along with these kind of developments of the character, or all of the characters, that we get the involvement of Mr. Lyle more in this season. He was a favorite of mine from season 1. So I like that choice that they made, and I like the choice to introduce and expand with, Inspector Rusk, the murders as well. I thought that was a really important element, here, because I think he added a really fascinating dimension to Ethan, as Ethan becomes less of the point of view character and gets his story developed along the way. And of course, what can I say that, the witches, not only is Eva Green fantastic, but Helen McQuarrie, I think she plays this witch of Evelyn Poole, Madame Carly, so well. She really embodies it. And I think the witches bring a very different element to the vampires, which are largely absent, if they're non-existent in this season. They bring a sinister and creepy element because they can walk within the day. Whilst their powers are heightened at night, they walk among us much more closely, in the time when we feel comfortable, and can still project their magic at that time. You see with her sort of ring. And of course the dolls are just, if it doesn't make you sort of stay up at night, I don't know what does.
It actually doesn't scare me as much as it does you. I must say, I absolutely love the design of the dolls. But
burn them all. Yeah. None of these dolls for me. But that's what I love about them as well. It's the absent terror in their faces, the dead eyes. Just a few mirrors behind their eyes would have really helped them feel alive.
Nice. Reference to season 1.
Yeah. But as well, it's just, I think, overarching. As I say, the vampire's largely absent, and I think you only learn it probably the episode 9, where Mr. Lyle says the two brothers. So there's a real nice pattern to these 2 seasons that complement each other, which is, season 1 is about the brother that has fallen to earth, and this is the brother that has fallen to hell. Dealing with vampires in this season with Lucifer primarily. Although I do wonder if it is Lucifer that is coming out at the seance in season 1, in which case there's a little hint there.
Yeah.
But that's the connection with Madame Kali. So there's a real nice, they complement one another really well. I think I like them both. I don't kind of want to say one or the other, to be honest. But I would give this season 5 ballyhoos out of 5 for sure. I could be snippy and say 4.5. I think I do prefer season 1 marginally. But I think in reality, I can't really put much between them. I think it's as solid as before, and as exciting and as fascinating and as interesting and as scary as hell. So, I like that. But dolls can go F off, to be honest.
Nice, John. Nice. Overall, my thoughts, I'm going to keep it short, really, because you guys have said everything I was going to say, really. It's an excellent second season, but I think that absolutely all lands at the feet of John Logan. What he was creating here with his story plays out so well in this second season, and he's created something for each of his characters that's made them all feel important to the story. We didn't really talk about, or you guys didn't really talk about Lily's story within what you were summing up the season, but I think what she goes through throughout the season, given that she was kind of comedy girl in season 1 who was just having terribly bad things happen to her, in this season she becomes a terrifying threat for everybody in the future. Effectively, she's committed herself to being the immortal that wants to rule the world side by side with Dorian. That's a huge arc for that character that wasn't really given a massive arc in season 1. So everybody has something to do within this season. And I think that's a testament to the writing of John Logan, and knowing his actors as well as he does now in the second season. He knows how much he can give to each of them to do. And I think everybody ups their game for the second season. Everybody involved. It's just such a good job. I'm excited to see season 3. I can't remember much of it. Unfortunately, it's been a long time since I've seen it. So I'm excited to come back to it when we get to season 3, looking at how that style is taken into the next season, because that's probably going to inform more about how we discuss Penny Dreadful City of Angels than any of the other show. This episode ends with "So we all walk alone now." Each of our major characters is now off on their own mission and all separated from each other. So I'm expecting that's how we're going to feel about the next season, and similarly how we're going to feel about City of Angels when it comes with brand new characters taking on a brand new storyline. So that's where I feel we are. We've ended a massive storyline of these 2 seasons, and now everybody has something new to do when we get into the next season. So very intriguing. Thanks so much, as always, for joining us for our discussions about Penny Dreadful. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on tvpodcastindustries.com. We're getting really excited about Penny Dreadful City of Angels coming up later on in the year. But if you want to support us, you can support us at patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. Ray, do you want to let everybody know where they can hear you on your other podcasts?
Yeah, sure. If you do like comic books and comic book characters, you can catch me on Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Best place to check that is into the night with a k.libsyn.com. I also do co-host a podcast about Superman. Not as well versed with that great character, but you can catch my thoughts on lskpodcast.libsyn.com.
Excellent. Lots and lots of good podcasts over there, Ray, that you do, and really enjoying them. We will eventually get you to rebrand your podcast as Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, I promise.
Should do.
We'll be back next time with our discussion about season 3 of Penny Dreadful. Really looking forward to kicking that one off. Thanks so much for joining us.
Catch you later, everyone. Thanks for listening, and go check out this show if you haven't already.
Thank you, fellow Darklings, for listening. As always, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Remember, in the words of Ethan Chandler, your road may be difficult, but ours is doomed. And hopefully, once we have sidestepped doom and gone purely into difficulty, we will be back to speak with you again, all about season 3 of Penny Dreadful. Just remember, fellow Darklings, keep watching, keep listening, and importantly, keep screaming.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.